background on. All right, we are in record mode. So today is the last Kubernetes Cassandra operator SIG meeting of the year. And I'm going to propose this on the ML, but I wanted to talk about it here real quick. I'm just going to propose to change this. And this is just a simple procedural thing, but changing this from Cassandra Kubernetes operator SIG to just Cassandra Kubernetes SIG. That's just that. And the reason being is in my conversations with a lot of folks in community, this is going to be the hot topic for 2021 in the Cassandra community, because it seems like there's a lot of pent up interest to make this happen. And I think we'll get a lot better participation. The operator was obviously the first thing that had to happen. That was table stakes. But now that we've gotten to the place where we're moving forward pretty well with that, I want to get our project, the Cassandra project, in a better footing when it comes to implementing with Cassandra and with Kubernetes. Hopefully, I've talked to some folks from Apple. They want to participate in this particular aspect of it because this is a priority internal there. And that we have other friends out there like the Yelp and New Relic and Bloomberg. I know wants to do this. Hopefully I can get DreamWorks to come back. That'd be great. They use a lot of Kubernetes. I'm gonna reframe this in the community as a place and put some structure around the idea of this is for not only the operator but all Cassandra to Kubernetes topics. One of the things that I think would be really helpful is if we had some sort of office hour type thing where we can all get together and just talk, have people come in and ask questions about their implementations. And that would be my track record. These are pretty bad, but it never stopped me before. It's like, hey, we're going to do office hours and nobody shows up. And if I can find some folks that want to come on and talk about it, and have people answer questions, I think that's going to give us some good community energy if I can pull it off. That's the more procedural thing. Any comments on that particular strain?
I think that's a solid direction. I think it would be helpful to have a couple of themes as we go into the next. We're at the end of 2020, and I think some high-level goals for the next 6 to 12 months would be really helpful. Sort of like a roadmap, but I think the roadmap is influenced by this. I'm thinking like this motion and kind of the place to think. So part of that is, and I know we don't have the CASCOP people here right now, but getting the CASCOP integration or the feature parity with CAS operator. Big shout out to Cyril for all the work that's going on there, and Jim, because I've seen you active on those tickets at. I know what time zone you're in, and it's ridiculous the time that you're checking out those tickets. So I think that's one motion we should go through. I'd love to have a higher level conversation around multi CASCOP or the multi-cluster approach and get some enhancement requests out there and to start to put the framework out there so we can get community feedback and integration, and we can all talk about what we need in this kind of solution. So I think my 3 things for this year, and I'd love to have other people speak up, are that CASCOP parity and just the merging of those projects, multi-region, and like there's a bunch of networking stuff there. It might be heavily documentation focused and less code, but I think it needs to be a focus. And I would love to see some research in the service mesh space. I'm talking to people every week. It comes up, and they've either standardized on a service mesh, or they don't want to deal with TLS at the Cassandra layer. They want to deal with it at the Envoy layer. Like, it would be helpful to A, have some of the research done there, but B, have some, I would say, some preliminary findings in that space that could influence future integration. So I'm not asking for everything right now. I'm asking to say, let's look at what this could be and start to kind of build out what that picture looks like. Not that we have to build it right now or in the next 6 months.
I'm willing to toss a first go at a ML discuss, just as like, hey, here we are. I agree that we can't declare victory on the operator and go home because it still needs to get finished. But it's nice that it's just more of engineering and less of community build on that. It's like, okay, this is just getting it done. Okay, what is it? What do we need to do to get it done? How can we gather around that effort and get it out? But I do like, actually, when you were saying this, I think the other thing that I would call out as parity is Cassandra parity. Like having Kubernetes, everything in Kubernetes that we do have parity with what Cassandra can do. Meaning multi-data center is an important thing. Things like that. I mean, that's you called that out specifically. There should be nothing in our Kubernetes implementation that gets in the way of the way Cassandra wants to work.
And I think it's worth having a shout out here. So we have Eric joining the call today from Ricto, and they have a CSI for Kubernetes and are focused in the storage space. There has been requests on previous SIG calls and with some of the one-on-one calls that I have around guidance with storage. And I think it would be helpful to talk with some of the CSI providers, Aricta being one, but also OpenEBS, and even look at some of the things that ship with Kubernetes and say, have some guidance around that and the pros and cons, whether that's the operational simplicity or performance or both in some cases. Like I said, that is also a frequent topic, and it would be helpful to have guidance that content, if people are asking about this, if we have that content out there, it will be consumed, and it can be helpful from a planning perspective as well.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, we're happy to, give a very short overview of what we do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it might be a good way to kick off the new year is like have more of a theme around it. And I would love to put together like an agenda where we can say, all right, let's and maybe even theme some days, like you said, CSI. Okay, have a theme for the day. It's nice to get status, but I think we're going into this realm now where there's so many different moving parts that the SIG meeting needs to have some structure around the components. Where it was just operator before, now we need to have open up the tent a little more bigger. Chris, you and I think we can probably put together a pretty good idea of what that should look like and propose that on the mailing list. And I'm sure there'll be only small modifications.
I'd love to ask for other topics as well that people are interested in,
in
the mailing list, and that could help influence that as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, does anyone have anyone here? I mean, right now that you could think of offhand? Not to put anybody on the spot. Okay. Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm really excited about the energy. I talk to folks in the community, and the exciting thing for me is this kind of putting some new fun energy into the Apache Cassandra community through a different means. And I've seen these cycles happen before, and this is great. This is where you get participation, is whenever like, oh, this is cool. This is like an interesting thing other than just running a cluster. I think the thing we have to think about, and this is just food for thought, is this has to be a really thoughtful process we go through with community members, because, and I've mentioned this before in many venues, is why would I take a perfectly running Cassandra cluster that's been operating well for years and poke it with a stick, put it in Kubernetes? John, you feel like it feels like you have an answer brewing. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
No, I think that should be a reoccurring question to kind of keep us focused on. Well, in the early discussions that you and I have had, I've said I think it's the broader, or maybe you had said it first, the broader objective here is to make Kubernetes the best platform for running Cassandra. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. And
Yeah.
There was a conversation earlier this week talking about running multiple instances of Cassandra per physical host, and kind of how that can be done, whether that's just through pure containers or with something like Kubernetes. And it fostered a really interesting discussion because we were talking about the needs of the user and whether or not they needed super ephemeral clusters and this way to stamp out and make a new cluster and then tear it down or do X number of things with it, or do they just need to, is this going to be something persistent that doesn't change? And if that is the case, do they want to go through the process of setting up a Kubernetes cluster, dealing with the control plane, the etcd cluster that has to go along with it, and all of those pieces? Or should they write some Ansible jobs to say Docker run a couple times and bind some network cards and call it good?
I believe it's container D run.
Whatever. Podman, if you're on Red Hat systems, yeah. But what I'm getting at is, there's at what point do you choose Kubernetes over a less expansive solution? Or,
Well, and other topic that is really interesting, we're going into this world where we're talking about having opinionated operations. And yeah, Jim is like, oh, opinionated operations. Hold my beer.
I'm on a DevOps Slack with like a lot of pretty experienced DevOps engineers, and it's interesting to see their take on Kubernetes. And I've been 100% lurking there. No, like, preaching. But yeah, it's like this stuff is still bubbling through like the tech universe. And the reason I bring it up right now is like, there's still a consistent view there that you should have one cube, like maybe one per environment, but like, why are you having more than one cube? And I'm like, no, you can already see from where the tooling is going that you're going to have like your Cassandra dedicated cube. And then next door, you'll have your, web app dedicated cube. And I'm not saying that we have to count on one or the other. We should be flexible when we push stuff. I'm in agreement, but I think it's interesting to see sort of like, depending on what phase of the adoption curve you're on, you're like, I'm sure back in the original Kubernetes that I missed, like 1.0, people were just like, oh, I'll set one up and dev test and prod all run together in it. And then there was probably an evolution of like, well, there's no real great reason you have to go to that level. Let's at least start splitting. And now definitely coming from other tooling and providers, you could see more thing of like, well, your cube creation stuff should just be more automation. So just make a cube per developer and like they get their whole stack, they're testing in it. And I think from where we've been with the operator, I know we've been okay that we fit in all these different things, but I know there's one big thing like John opened a ticket, or maybe it was Cyril, that like you can't Helm install our operator twice. You can install the operator twice, but you require sort of an expert level of fine tuning, which is not great. The Helm stuff, we just sort of have some outstanding work to do to make it installable twice. So it's like those kind of things where it's like, oh yeah, depending on which part of the adoption curve you're on, like maybe if you're a brand new adopter today, you're okay with many cubes. Maybe if you're someone who did one cube, you want to be on many. I don't really know how people move through this, but it's interesting to see that and to kind of
well, in my experience with the Cassandra community in early days, especially when we were all in a group psychosis trying to figure out operations, is the more voices you get involved, the better it is. Because, like if it was just DataStax saying how you should install Cassandra, that's not going to fit. If it was just Apple, definitely not Apple. Because, they're going to be like, how to install bazillions of Cassandras? No. But like there are so many different ways of deploying it, from implementations and destinations and use cases. And so only way we can ever get close is have as many people involved as possible. So that for me, my own personal goal for the year will be, trying to get as many teams involved as possible. Because that's the only way it's going to work in the long run. Or else it'll just be an implementation used by a few people, and that's not really that's not a success factor in community building, like something like this. And I think we have a good chance. So things that make that work are, being inclusive in community means being, having a clear path. How do I participate? So I think that's where we're going to be. That's going to be very clear. I think what's happening in like the CAS operator is really cool. And there's obvious inclusivity into that. Like, okay, you can participate, but, like Cassandra, same thing. And just in the project in general, do I have a path to participate? Is it easy, or do I have to learn the Cassandra internals to participate? God, I hope not. And like having Eric here is great, because it's not just operators, it's also vendors that work within the Kubernetes space that are it's like a network effect. Like, think of like Ericto as a super node into Kubernetes. There's like a whole new bunch of edges that we bring into the party. So this is why I really want to be as inclusive as possible. People who work in Kubernetes and also people who have to live with it. Okay, well, I think it'd probably be a good time to switch gears and talk about where we are with the operator. Jim, maybe you can give us a quick update. And just where are we sitting with the project merge?
Yeah, so Cyril and I, Cyril, John, and I have had some chat through ASF Slack pretty often now. Like, I'm talking to Cyril. I'm bad with the pronunciation, but several times a week. Yeah, he's submitted. We merged one PR that he made, and he's got another one very close. I think he's going to kick it over to ready for review, and I think so. What were his two things? One thing was better treatment for. We kind of severely simplified how we do pinning racks to cloud availability zones, and he made it more generic. Probably better if you're on premises, with still a pretty simple interface. So that was good. And then his other one is more volume support. So we sort of make it so you get one data volume per Cassandra. And there's like, but what if I want to keep my logs that way? Or what if I want to keep commit logs off of a different volume than the SS table? So kind of a more free-form approach to that is his second PR. As far as addressing other tickets, I am trying to remember the last time we met. I cut a CAS operator release just after KubeCon, but I think we spoke since then. But if not, that was a little update since then. There's some bug fixes that need to get done. John has a couple things outstanding that he found when he was working through Cassandra and just worked it through, and it just needs to go get merged back to upstream. I mean, I think given that this project didn't exist in February, really, like the code existed, but it wasn't open source, and where we're at, like I think we're on a great trajectory. I don't know if I'm feeling like we should have gotten more done before the end of the year, but it's also like everyone has other things that take their time from time to time. But all in all, I'm feeling really good that like in the first half of the next year, we can like get them merged. It's not as much of a merge as it is like a feature parity thing. I think maybe there'll be a couple more direct code pull things, but that's not really for me to say. I hope at some point, because yeah, it just seems like a lot of work if not. But I think basically Cyril's been tackling the kind of, it's not really stuff in the periphery, but so much as like targeted tasks, like more specific. So I know there was other things that we needed to cover before we would be in good shape. We've talked a lot about other tasks too, like multi-data center, which you brought up earlier, Patrick. So I think there's a path forward for all of this. His understanding of how CAS operator works has gone up probably like a lot. He's in the code now, and before, you know, whatever, a month ago, 2 months ago. Like it was all purely at discussion level like this. So I'm sure he's like, yeah, I would feel, I need to probably get some sign off, but I'd feel pretty comfortable like making him a, you know, code owner on the project pretty soon here, which is
Yeah.
great. Like,
I was going to ask about that. It's like,
yeah,
when are we going to
definitely
get
not like,
independent?
definitely not holding that back so much as like, we didn't talk about it, and like, I need to see if there's some administrivia stuff, but I
Well,
would be comfortable
yeah.
with it. So, I mean, that's,
Contributor license agreement, CLA.
yeah, yeah, we talked about it. I think he said he signed one back in the day, maybe about drivers or something else. And I was like, well, the language is up, like, let's just do it again. I worked with DataStax Legal, and there is an updated thing.
Well, this is a good point around that clear path is, was one we've struggled with in the project before, in the Cassandra project, is if I want to contribute, what are the steps? And it's not just for, clone the repo. It's also, you have to sign a CLA, and there's other things like, the style guide, things like that. And so as a project matures into something and we want to make more participation, those are just kind of baselines that have to be there that are clear. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, it's not like this is new stuff. We're not reinventing anything. Do you have a clear enough roadmap of like, all right, here's the things that need to happen for this to be parity? Like the feature parity is here.
Yeah, we've done, I think, a pretty good job. Maybe there's some gap, but we've opened a set of anything that Cyril has called out as a ticket that's like needed for compatibility. We've labeled it on GitHub, and I think,
yeah, I like the orange tags. That's really cool.
Yeah. refresh. Orange, perfect. Go. I think we turned down 2 from where we started, so maybe 2 out of 8. I mean, they're not the hardest 2, and I think this will be a third one out of the 8-ish.
So you're saying once those are done, then I mean that's the complete list?
I think so. I mean, if Frank was here, he could comment better, but I think all the issues were opened, but having worked in engineering long enough, it's like, no, I'm sure there's more things found, but at least they'll be like unblocked from testing, I think, at that point. Like they should be able to like get really into the weeds at that point. And yeah, there's, I know it's public on GitHub, but he hasn't really linked it. Cyril's been making tests with Kuttl, Kuttl, and it's the testing framework from Kudo, which is nice. It's just YAML, and he's basically been saying like, here's like a data center that does something for CASCOP, and here's a data center that does something for can I express the same thing for CAS operator, and like tries to push them both forward. We spent a while on how little the pods can be, and I kind of reused some of my intel from one of my other hats on, trying to explain like, I don't know if there's that much sense in trying to drive these integration tests with pods that have less than a gigabyte of memory. It would be nice, but like just on GitHub, you get a runner with 8 gigabytes and you can install kind in this stuff, and it kind of just works to do some testing, but like obviously faster is better and like less CPU is better. So anyway, we went back and forth for a little while about that. But so anyway, he has this testing project out there that he's using to kind of drive forward. So that's what I mean. He's like definitely getting more into like is it usable for us? Like where are the gaps? And he's he's opened more tickets in the last 3 weeks than he did, or new tickets
right, well,
since the last time we had this meeting.
I think, and this is trying to think of this as like, what if I was just an outsider in my first impression. I think the thing that's going to speak the loudest, and Chris, I would love your impression on this as well, is when I see Orange and DataStax adopting the new parity operator, like some sort of public declaration saying, once upon a time we were here, now we're here, and we're both using this in production. Chris?
Yeah, what are you looking for from me? Because that sounds great.
Okay, and any modification, but I guess yeah, hell yeah. Okay, good. I think well, this is where I mean, this is the real test in my mind when Jim's like, okay, I'm gonna do that, and Cyril's like, yeah, we're totally doing that, and they're not like, well, then if you say, well, then it's not ready yet. Why would you want anyone else in the world to use it if you're not willing to use it yourself? That's a good test.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting public declarations, which I will post in a blog, and it'll be awesome.
This is my first like serious push with open source. So I really would like to know, like, how does any project, for any org or whatever, collect some sort of kind of, these are users in prod, or these are maybe even if it's not prod, but it's like, oh yeah, like we're invested in this. Like if it went away, we would be sad. So I think that would be useful information to have, and just
Sure,
Or
we can do that, and it's voluntary, of course. There's no marketing operations that goes out and finds people. It's voluntary, but I'm saying like a blog post on the Apache, the Cassandra.apache.org website that talks about CAS operator is now, officially good to go, and then here's a little blurb from Mirage. Here's a little blurb from DataStax. It's all like, yep. Because that is what I'm going to point people to when they're like, what operator should I use? This one, and this is why. And most new people to Cassandra Kubernetes just want to make sure that they're using the one that A, works, and B, isn't going away. Yeah, because that's I want, because I'm going to install this and I'm probably going to forget about it for 3 years.
Well, just a minor nit clarification. Well, in fairness to others, it's not so much a case of one working and others not. I think it's more around, not saying that we're consolidating CAS operator because CAS operator works and CAS cop does not, or it's
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like people are the first thing they're gonna ask, does this thing work? And that's not gonna be the case. They're just like, because there's a lot of choices out there, or is it maintained? I mean, how many of you looked at an open source project and the first thing you do is you go to the GitHub and look when the last commit was?
every time.
Every single time, right?
Absolutely the first thing I do when I'm like, I use this. It's funny, even I was like in Go's so stable, you can find good open source. It's like, well, it was heavily updated up till 2 years ago, and now there's just no more bugs. Like, and then
yeah. I don't know. I've been in software for
no,
35 years.
It's unusual. It's like highly unusual, but like I can see like Kubernetes consumes projects like that. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
But
No, Go is just that awesome, is what you're saying.
sometimes like the 4 file libraries, it just is like, yeah.
I really expect this from Rust people, not Go.
But then there's YAML and Go where there's like 7 YAML libraries and none of, it's a disaster. So, you still need to do your research. So
you could bump the README. I don't know, something.
Exactly.
Put a copyright update. I don't know.
There's some cause to do something once a year at least. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's the key, is like, showing vibrancy in a project is really important. Yeah. And if you're a really big company, like a bank that wants to move their stuff into Kubernetes, I guarantee you that 2-year tag on a commit is going to be a meeting. Do we want to use this? Because we're probably going to own it.
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, like there's a couple really good projects that I've encountered, like they have the archive tag dropped on them and it immediately ripples out into the GitHub universe, and you see like they usually make an issue, we're going to archive this project, and then you see the trackbacks from a bunch of different other projects, all corners. Like the ones I'm thinking of are etcd operator, which sadly got archived. I don't really know why. I think they just felt like it's feature complete. But yeah, I feel like if you're going to use it now, you have to like maintain a fork, because like who knows if another Kubernetes version that comes out breaks it. So that's like an operator. That's a really salient example. And then another one, a little different, but another Go thing, kind of like important to developer flows. There's this unification of AWS and Okta. Now I think AWS maybe pushed something that makes that better. So but like as soon as it went to archives, it was like, oh, a bunch of developers use this in their daily flow. Like, is it safe to use this? What if there's a security problem? And they're just like, yeah, we'll remove archive tag, but like, we're not planning on doing anything. If you want to be the maintainer, like, so yeah, we're in no way presenting that image, but yeah, there is some idea of like, for the first few months, I just tried to be like, let's just get a release together at the end of the month. And then we sort of had not less to work on, but like the problems were getting more abstract and stuff. So now we're kind of like, I don't know, we're trending towards like every other month or quarterly right now, which isn't great, but we could do patch releases too, which is sort of like getting more community involvement would be good. Cause like,
That's the point.
anytime one of these forums, someone's coming with some kind of need, I'm like, could you please make a GitHub issue? Because I opened the GitHub issues and I'm like, if there's really nothing.
Well,
like,
community
what the
involvement,
priority to me, but I don't know
usage, that will drive all of this, because that the thing that always, when I see a project that hasn't had an issue in 2 years, that means that I don't think anyone's been using it for 2 years. You know, it's like, of course there's going to be bugs, because there's just going to be bumps in other libraries that may have incompatibilities, anything. But if we have enough surface area on people using it, and I think this is there's a collective holding of breath, watching what's happening in the project, like what's the project rallying around, it's going to open up a lot of use cases. And to be frank, so is Cassandra. It's because no one wants to be the first pancake. I know that's a very American term, but nobody wants to be the one who got hit. Like, I'll go second. And so we need to start showing those cases. And I think this is where community helps out too. It's like reassuring you, hey, this is what I did. I would love to do some meetups around it. I don't want to just pick on like New Relic or Yelp, but if they are willing to talk about, here's how we use, CAS operator in production, that will help instill. This is good community energy. So, all right. So I think this kind of caps this. We need to, I think there's some communication needs to happen on the mailing list for sure. Would you be willing to do just a quick status email, Jim? Or I know you're super busy, but just like, hey, everyone, this is what's happening with the CAS operator.
Standard dev list or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of an end of the year cap. Just say, hey, before you turn into can't turn into a pumpkin. Turn into a snowman.
Snowman.
Yeah. Here's kind of the end of the year. Yeah. See you later, 2020. This is probably your shiniest light of 2020 is CAS operator. Everything else sucked.
Finding those silver linings is pretty good right now. But yeah, I can draft up an email of like sort of the major milestones, and it's kind of like a clean, tighter version of Chris's email from many weeks ago, but also giving sort of like, the saying, like we're getting some cross-company participation. And honestly, like I was gonna say something earlier, but you captured proof. But even within DataStax, it's like there's people I don't work with who contribute now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty cool. And like that's what I'm saying, just like you're getting problems from users and you're in like APAC or whatever, like please make a GitHub issue. Like someone put a good one in the other day about how certs are done, and like I looked at it, I was like, yeah, we need some small changes here just to like make a better runway for people. Probably rotating your cert every year shouldn't be the default. Like you could choose that maybe, or maybe we just need to configure it. So anyway, it's like great when more stuff comes in. So I'll kind of make that email get you together. So hopefully something, anything like that, any feedback, any more GitHub issues. I turned on GitHub discussions on the project too, actually, because it's like a new GitHub thing, and I was like, see what happens. I saw a couple projects using it. We have too many discussion forums, so of course the logical thing to do is like, enable one more, but it's going to be the most integrated one. And I could say like people post in Gitter. There's a lot of traffic on Gitter. Maybe in October, there's been a little less lately, but someone wrote the other day, and it seemed like just generic Cassandra questions, and I was like, just please give me your Kubernetes YAML and I'll try to help you, but I'm not even sure they're using Kubernetes. So we'll see. But yeah, try to push more people to like the same forum so they could see that the conversation is not like, so the conversation isn't fragmented, and you could see sort of some volume there that'll
Maybe that's another topic we should
push
tackle.
snowballs together, you know.
Yeah, and I think this is another thing that we need to talk in relation with Cassandra as well. Is we're starting to bifurcate and split, and it's fragment. None of those words are good. I've always had the defragmenter, not the fragmenter. Unless I'm splitting up like candy for my kids, fragmentation is terrible. So we need to think about how we're going to get, because it's just, unless there's like thousands of people talking about Kubernetes and Cassandra, which there aren't, we need to find all the different angles and get them in one place if we can. I think we have some ideas that have been floated around here and there, but this is a good thing. I mean, this is a good first part of 2021 is consolidating communication in a place for all topics around Cassandra and Kubernetes, be it operator, be it, Reaper, Prometheus, whatever. I mean, we're going to get all those questions and we need one place. So, boy, and I'm not going to give you an answer today. Who knows? There's a lot of them. All right. Is there anything else we need to cover?
I want to put a shout out up there with John Sanda's team on Cassandra. There are some hooks being added to the management API for Apache Cassandra. Is that just for backups, or are we also hooking in for repairs? John, do you remember?
So changes have already been made and new images pushed out for backup. It's nothing for repairs.
Okay, but
and so
we are having some work happening there to enable.
And then there's I would anticipate the next release of Medusa would incorporate those changes, but not 100% certain.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's going to be, like if we structure this SIG a little differently, it'll be CAS operator updates, Cassandra updates, discussion points around those for sure. Like these are the things that we need to expand the tent on. I think as CAS operator becomes more of a standard operating tool with less to talk about and more to talk about around implementation of Cassandra and Kubernetes, that's when Cassandra is going to start eclipsing everything because it's huge. It's huge. Maybe that's a good kickoff for January when we all come back. Let's talk about this big topic. All right, great. Well, does anybody else have anything else? Hands up. No. Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for showing up today. Great update. Jim, if you could send that just a quick status email, that'd be fantastic. And I'll upload this video shortly. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.